All right, my name is Carson and this is Myron. Have a lot of experience investing in real estate. I've invested in, we've owned about 50 long-term rentals, short-term rentals, commercial, and I know you've had quite a few different investments too, so.
Yeah, so my name is Myron Chamberlain. I'm at Prime Lending. I've known Carson 11 years now, and we've shared investing ideas. So I do strictly long-term rentals. Everything that I've done for the most part is buy and hold. And we've got 44 rentals in Arizona and Oklahoma. So that's...
If you went across states, I haven't done that yet, so that's interesting. One thing interesting about Myron is I started working with Myron. How long ago has it been now?
2012.
2012, you know the date, wow. So it's been over 10 years, and the reason I started working with Myron is because I started working through about 10 or 15 lenders. They would overpromise, underdeliver, and Myron was working as a cross-sell lender. He was working with the buyer of one of my flips, and he stayed in contact with me for about a year, I would say, and I ran across a deal that was hard to get done and ran it by Myron, and he was able to get the deal done after another lender just kind of gave up on the deal and didn't want to work through the hard parts of lending, and I've worked with you pretty consistently since then. So. Yeah,
it's been a great relationship, and one of the things I've always admired about Carson is he's got while we invest very differently, I've always thought the way he does it is a great way, and I've seen such fruit off of the investments that he's made over the last 10 or 12 years. So I think anyone working with him or in the brokerage or not in the brokerage but is considering joining will learn an immense amount about real estate and how to build wealth through real estate.
I think it's interesting because we both have done different things. So here we go. Today we're gonna go mainly through the path. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed with, like, how do I get started in buying rentals? And I've told some of the people here before, if I could start all over and I didn't have capital, I would do a plan similar to this to get started. So we're going to walk through it, and you guys could ask questions as we go through, and it's a great way to build wealth, and we'll see what you guys think of it.
And I would say it's probably a fair statement that anyone who's real estate invested for a long period of time will tell you most of their net worth and their wealth is done through real estate. Very little of it has been accumulated through their job and their savings.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a stat out there that says 90% of millionaires are from real estate. So that's always been an interesting stat to me. So let's start going through the slides. Let's go to the next one. So the first step is to saving some money, having some money to buy a house. And in this scenario, we're saying you're going to save 20%, and we're going to show you how you get there.
20,000.
20,000. Yeah, same thing. 20% roughly of it, but 20,000 in dollars.
Oh, I see, right, yeah.
So let's jump into. In our real estate firm, we mapped out a plan for agents to get to where they're making at least 100 grand their first year. And the steps that we have for them are to do at least 2 hours of phone prospecting a day, which, you know, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you add it together, you're getting in front of a lot of different people. And then we have a morning huddle in the morning, which the whole purpose of it is to get accountability of what you're going to do that day and actually discuss what you're going to do to get your day started, and then work through an objection. So you get better at talking to people. Like if someone says the market's going to crash, most people don't have something off the top of their mind to answer that question. So we work through that on a daily basis. And then the next thing is we do an office meeting once a week where we go over stats, we go over where the current market is. Myron always sends where the rates are, where he thinks lending is going to go in the near term and long term. So when you're talking to clients, you sound like you're knowledgeable and you know the data to address that. And then the next thing is we do a book study, and it's usually some kind of sales training that we go through. Right now we're going through Never Split the Difference, and it's been a great way to get better at sales. The next thing is Mastermind, which is we do that as a group, and we pick partners and we go through what our goals are for till the end of the mastermind, and then for the next week to get to those goals at the end of it. And then the last thing is actually showing property. And if you're not showing property, you go back to step one, where you're either doing open houses or making more calls to get in front of people. So all that equals about 26 hours a week of activity, and anyone that has done that has mainly been able to get to where we're going to show you in this presentation.
Yeah, and I would say that I think most of the audience here today is probably in the real estate field. I've got some clients that aren't in the real estate field, and when they have that goal saying, I need 20,000, how do I get it? I would say the two most, or not maybe the two most common ways, but one of the ways that clients do it is there are so many easy options right now for moonlighting and making extra money.
Yeah.
Through Uber Eats, DoorDash. It's amazing how you can sign up in half an hour. And I did the math this morning. For you to do a part-time DoorDash or part-time Uber, within about 5 to 6 months, you would have the 20,000 saved. So,
and didn't your 18-year-old daughter get close to 20 grand just working part-time jobs for the last 3 years to buy her first property?
Yeah, so she did just through Target. But I think the obstacles are very, very few if your mindset is saying, I need the money. There's so many ways out there that within 6 months, I think you could save the 20,000.
Yeah, you just have to think outside the box. But this is one specifically for real estate agents that'll get you there too.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
let's go to the next slide. So this shows our program, and this is mainly just off the leads. It doesn't even talk about your personal splits or personal deals. So we're saying if you hit on our leads 19 transactions, you'll get there, and we could go over a specific plan for that if you guys want it. But whatever brokerage you're at, I'm sure you could hit these numbers on different splits and whatnot, and it may be different numbers, but that's just a way to get to that 20,000 and saved money, which is 20%. So right there, 20% equals just over $20,000. So step 2 is buying your first primary residence. I don't know if you guys all own your primary residence, but I feel like that's like the first step, because it gives you a fixed cost going forward. You fix costs where you're living, and if you're renting, obviously it goes up every year. Typically, if the landlord has any real estate knowledge or renting knowledge at all, that they know that appreciation of rents go up 4 to 6% typically in the Phoenix metro market.
And one piece to go into this is that if the best way without question to get into your first rental property is primary residence, always. The interest rate's lower, the down payment's lower, the all around terms are better. And you can take a primary residence to mean just a single family home, which is what a lot of people do. But a very common strategy, especially in central Phoenix, is there is a lot of properties down there that are very reasonably priced that have what's called an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit. They're all between 400 to 700 square feet, and right now that's going to rent for $1,100 to $1,300 a month. And so, despite higher rates and higher mortgage payments, you can very easily generate that $1,000 to $1,300 to help offset your living cost if you look for that type of property. Or you could buy a 2 to 4 unit property. So
yeah, duplex, triplex, fourplex.
Yep. And I looked this morning just out of curiosity, and I looked at multifamily homes in Phoenix under 500,000, and there was 38 listings available. So there is properties out there that meet that demographic, and you can substantially reduce your cost of owning if you end up going with 1, 2, 3, or 4 unit, and you can do that with FHA and only 3.5% down.
Yeah. And I mean, when I first started, I did something similar. I just bought a 4-bedroom house and had 3 other roommates, so they cover the majority of the cost of the house, and we split utilities, so that saved me a lot of cost my first few years living in the valley. So in this scenario, we're looking at purchasing a $450,000 house to live in, and the house is going to be remodeled, and you're putting down either 3.5% or 3% conventional. And things to think about is you could negotiate closing costs, you could negotiate your commission back into the property after that. So you really don't need that much capital, but we're kind of looking at worst case scenarios.
That is without question one of the biggest secrets that real estate agents can do is you're one of the only groups that you can use your commissions towards your down payment. And so you can get creative if you need to, take your 3% and use that towards your down payment. You get seller closing costs paid for, so you're buying a house for 0.5%. No other group can do that.
Have you seen any other crazy things that real estate agents have done?
Well, I would say there's times too where you could, if you wanted to go into it with 100% financing, you can try to work something out to where you stick it at 3.5% commission, stack it onto the purchase price, so that way you can kind of negotiate 100% of your down payment being paid for, and then look for homes that have been on the market a long time, get 3 to 6% in seller contributions, buy your rate down. So you have such a unique ability to structure a mortgage payment in terms so far removed from what the general public can do.
Mm-hmm. And this one we're looking kind of like, what's the worst case it'll be, and going from there. So there's obviously a lot of other things you could do. But. Step 3 is buying your first rental. You're gonna save this next year. So year 2, we've typically seen the agents that are with us, their skill set gets better, their conversions get better, and they make more money and they do more transactions because they're that much better. And so in this scenario, the agent's doing $200,000 in commissions, and it kind of roadmaps it there what their transactions look like. So you're saving 20% of that, and so that's right around $40,000. And then we're saying you're not going to buy a house your second year. You certainly could, but in this scenario, we save that money till the next year. And year 3, you get a little bit better in real estate, do some more transactions, and you do right around $262,000. And right here, the money that you save from those 20% from year 2 and 3 is roughly $94,000, and you add that together and buy a rental house. So this is your first rental house that you bought, and at this point we're looking at buying a $600,000 house, putting 10% down. How far low can you go as far as putting down money on conventional?
So if you were to move into the home, you can go again at 5% down. So 5% would be the minimum if you're an existing homeowner and you're wanting to buy your second primary residence.
So you could rent out your first one and then move into this one if you wanted to with less capital. So you technically could do this your second year, but we're kind of not pushing the envelope in this and just trying to give you a good plan that's not super risky, but will be helpful to you. So here we mapped out a couple other options. On the second house, you could make the first house a rental like Myron said, and make the second one your primary, so you would need less capital. You could house hack, rent out rooms again. You could do an assumable mortgage where it would possibly take less capital, or do a seller carryback if you find someone that'll fully they'll be the landlord to you, so you might not have to put down any money at that point.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions on any of these concepts here? Assumptions, seller carrybacks, house hack? do you know what the terms mean and questions on that? Yeah,
For the first example, make home number 1 a rental
yeah.
and make number 2 a primary. What's
Yeah.
the time that you have to live in your primary residence before
Yeah.
you can buy another primary?
It's a good question.
Yeah, super good. So the mortgage paperwork says 12 months. It says the intent is 12 months. And so if you want to be to the letter of the law, 12 months is it. As a rule of thumb in the industry, most lenders will accept you turning that other one into a rental for a legitimate reason within 6. So I could say you could replicate that every 6 months, but 12 months to be very safe.
If this agent is being able to increase their income like this, are they going to be able to qualify for that second loan?
Yep. So if you're an existing homeowner, you can use the rental income on that departing residence through a lease agreement at 75% to offset the prior payment. And so you're not having to qualify for 2 mortgages, you're basically qualifying for the lease at 75%, which directly offsets the first mortgage.
That's great.
Yeah. And that can happen time and time again. So it actually becomes easier and easier generally to qualify for more homes and more property because you have that additional income.
So I feel like this thing plays out even faster the more homes you get because you have less risk, you have less, you have more tenants, and if you lose 1 out of 10, that's like, 90% is rented.
Yeah.
So can the second home be a multifamily?
Yeah. The biggest thing is the occupancy. So if you're going to be a primary residence, it can be.
If the second home, you can move into one of the units, you can make your first one a rental, move into one of the units in the multifamily and rent out the other ones.
Sure.
And that would still be primary.
Yeah, for sure. Now, on multifamily, however, keep in mind, FHA is the only option that gives you low down payment. If you go to the conventional route, you've got to do a larger down payment on multifamily. I believe it's 15 or 20%. And it changes for a 2-unit or a 3 to 4 unit. So there is a distinction on that.
I was just saying, just repeat the question in case they couldn't hear from behind the microphone.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, so the question was, can you buy multifamily for that second property that you're wanting to graduate into? And the answer is yes, you can.
Do you have to have reserves when you buy that second property?
Not anymore. So you used to have reserves, like 6 months reserves for the old home, and then also reserves on the new home. Fannie Mae now on a primary residence doesn't require any reserves.
In this scenario, you would have some reserves, so we'll go forward.
Yeah.
So this one, we're kind of looking at like the closer to worst case scenario. So this one, your first one, you rent out, let's say the payment's $32.50, then that's at a 6% interest rate. You rent it out for the same, which doesn't seem like it makes a whole lot of sense. But on this one, we're looking at cash flow. And with interest rates high like this, it's hard to cash flow on properties. So 0 cash flow year 1. And then year 4, we're gonna repeat this process. You're gonna get a little bit better in real estate, your skill set's gonna get better. Some of the people that you worked with in year 1, year 2 are gonna start referring people to you. It just becomes easier the longer that you build your pipeline in real estate. So you're gonna save 20% again, and that's roughly $63,000. And you're gonna purchase your second rental home. This one is gonna be 10% down, and like we said, there's other options, but that's what we're going with on this one. You can obviously negotiate closing costs, commissions into this, so it could be a lot less. This one, you're actually gonna have a little cash flow in it, not much, but your payment's gonna be $2,700 and you're gonna rent it out for $2,800. So year 1, you're gonna have a cash flow of $1,200, which doesn't seem like a lot either. Year 5, it's gonna be similar to what year 4 was. Unless you're building a team and that, it's harder to get over this amount by just being a single agent. So you're gonna save again year 5, and that's roughly 66,000. And you're gonna buy another rental, 10% down, same thing as the one before. You're gonna rent it out, similar cash flow as before. And then we're gonna look forward, if appreciations are on the low side and your rent is on the low side, what it looks like. So we're gonna zoom this out 10 years. And on your primary home, this is if you don't rent out anything and you just stabilize your expenses. Your appreciation on this house, if we're increasing at 5%, which I think the Valley's been at 6 to 7, and Scottsdale has been over 9% for the last 10 years. So this is on the conservative side. But appreciation on this one's right at 250,000 over that 10-year period, which, you know, this will add to your net worth pretty quickly. Buying your first rental home, we did this obviously at 10% down. The value's increased about 5% since you purchased it. Your appreciation's right around 250,000. Here's how we broke down the rents on your first one. So your first rental, it pretty much broke even. You didn't get a lot of profits in cash flow, but rents typically go up, and we did this at rents going up at 4%, which is, it's been conservative based on historicals, but at the end of year 10, you have $35,000 in cash flow, which doesn't seem like a lot, but as this keeps adding up, this money is going to be great for your retirement. The appreciation on your second rental home is at the year 10. Obviously you bought this in year 4, so it doesn't have as long of timeline as some of the two before it. And your appreciation is right at 170,000. And that's, your original investment was 50,000, so that's like tripling your money in less than 10 years. So. Here's what the cash flow was. I think this one made about $1,000 the first year, a little over that, but it obviously goes up the longer that you're invested in it. So your cash flow at the end of year 10 is roughly $28,000. But your appreciation went up dramatically. You tripled your money on that too. Then your third one that you invested in, your appreciation has a lot less timeline. So you're at just under 150,000 in appreciation. Same thing, your rent's right around 20,000 cash flow. At the end of those 10 years, it's right around 900,000 in returns. And we didn't include in this paying down your mortgage. So if you add all those, that would probably knock it over the $1 million in net worth. But I haven't had the time to add all paying down all your mortgages. So I'll do that, and maybe on the next one we'll have that updated for you. So other things we didn't include that are huge advantages of rents. You probably could hit on a few of these, Myron.
Yeah. So paying down the equity, fixed costs on personal tax deduction, mortgage interest payments, real estate taxes. So one thing that's very interesting is, as real estate professionals, you guys are in a class all unto yourself. So myself as a W-2 employee, or a doctor, dentist, nurse, plumber, they can't take the real estate tax deduction the same way you can as a real estate professional. And so the losses that you take when you buy rental property are a direct dollar for dollar loss if you're in real estate against your ordinary real estate income. So that's something that's very important to remember, is the benefit that you have is substantially more than 99% of the rest of the population who doesn't fall into that designation with the IRS. And then I think the piece that I've always felt with real estate is the first 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 years, it never is going to feel like
It's doing anything.
it's doing
right?
anything. It's
really
not.
slow.
It's because you're going to be feeding the properties a little bit. You might have tenant problems. You might have headaches, and you're just going to people that do it and give up. And the value of real estate is time. There's no two ways about it. And it's also the fixed spread. So when you take out debt, that is fixed for 30 years. And there's not anyone here that couldn't ask their parents and say, what was your mortgage payment 20 years ago? If you did that, and you heard what that payment was, it would blow your mind. Well, that's the same that's gonna be said of you if you buy a
Probably
property.
as much as it costs to eat at Chipotle,
Yeah.
right?
It's true, it's true.
It seems that way.
Yeah, but I remember like in my career, like in the 2012, 13 through 15 days, I seldom had a person with a mortgage payment over $1,500.
Yeah.
Like cresting that 2,000 mark was very unusual. And so when your payment is fixed for 30 years and you're then tying that to an asset class that's appreciating 4 to 5% per year, your spread in your cash flow is going to be it's going to be amazing how far, and that'll allow you to.
And the value is in that leverage. So yeah, it doesn't seem like it's appreciating that much at 5%, but 5% where you're borrowing that money is where you really get ahead of everybody,
Yeah.
right?
And then the other thing I think is don't be afraid to take risks. If you're here because you're obviously interested in real estate. Everyone who's done well in real estate has taken risks. And I would say try to build your asset base as early as possible. In these examples, they were showing $500,000 and $600,000 homes, but if you were to buy, say, 3 of those before you were 30, all of a sudden you have $2 million on your balance sheet. Well, you might have 1.8 million in debt or 1.9 million in debt, so you're not going to feel wealthy at all. But when you turn on the TV and they say Phoenix appreciated 6%, 6% times 2 million, that means you just earned 120,000 that year. You'll never feel it, you'll never see it, but I would say build your asset base as early as possible, because that's ultimately what's going to bring wealth.
I've told this story a few times, but my wife's beautician, she was in that industry. She did hair for 30 years, and her goal was every year to buy a house, and now she's in her 70s and is selling off one house every single year, so to live on. So she's living a really comfortable life now, and it's done really well, but I don't know how many houses she owns,
Yeah.
but it's been a lot.
So question, I think this will blow your mind. So you're all realtors in here, or many of you are realtors. So if you do this strategy and you acquire one house every 6 months or a year, you use the 5% down conventional loan, you use your 3% commission towards that, and then you buy your first house with 0.5% down, what's the total amount that you've made as a down payment once you've acquired 10 properties? So you could buy 10 properties in your portfolio. What would be your total out of pocket? So you could do this in 6 years to 10 years. So you buy 9 properties at 2% down, that's 18%. You buy your first one at 0.5% down. So for 18.5% down, you can own 10 properties. You can do it within the framework of 5 to 10 years.
So we went the conservative route.
But it's true, you just have to be open to moving. And so it's not always the most conducive to someone with family and kids.
Yeah.
But the benefit you have is mind-blowing as to what's possible.
Yeah. Is there any more slides, John? So the commissions over that whole time were 1.2 million. So you're still living on 80% of that. Plus, I think there was about 80,000 left over, right?
Yeah, just
right
saved.
around there. That's just saved. So technically, you could have bought another house or several more. You guys have any questions right now? Anyone?
I just have a general question because, like I told you guys earlier, I bought a condo just recently, hasn't
Yeah.
closed yet. I paid cash.
Nice.
So for me, is it a smart move when the interest rates come back down? I was thinking when the interest rates come back down, then you actually refinance and take that money and just buy properties.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's like
Does that make sense?
It's like the Burr method, kind of similar.
She disagrees with you, but
Yeah, I know.
You guys are gonna have to.
But Myron is good insight. That's for sure.
I would say without question, because I will say I was just there's a number of real estate podcasts I follow, but I was listening to someone yesterday, extremely successful in real estate. He said, I can't even remember how much money I made through cash flow. Like, you make a little bit, everyone talks about cash flow, but you'll never remember how much you made in cash flow because it's it's small potatoes. Everyone remembers how much they made through appreciation. And so if you buy a condo, let's just say it's $300,000. Well, if the real estate market appreciates 6% this year, you've made $18,000. And so that's not a bad return, but it's very, very average.
Right.
You know, and so if you were to pull out 200,000 and then go finance another two, and now you own $1 million, well, for the same appreciation, you just made 60,000 on the return. And so the value of real estate is all in what the asset base is, or the total value of your portfolio. And so it does add another element of risk for sure, but your returns are going to be basically triple if you buy three, double if you buy two.
Okay.
But I would say do that only up to the cash flow. So basically take your mortgage payment and HOA dues, leave about $100 in there per month for expenses and cushion, and then use that as the figure that you pull cash out up to in order to determine what the loan amount would be. And then I would do it once rates probably get back down to about 5.5%, which you're probably talking December of this year, is when I would look to put that loan on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How many loans can you generally get at 30-year fixed? And who do you get them through?
So you can do conventional 10 per person. So do keep in mind spouses count as a separate person in the household. So you can do 20 conventional loans per household or 10 per individual.
Is that even possible if let's say your wife or your husband is a stay-at-home spouse?
Sure, you have to be creative in how you do it. But yes, my wife has never worked a day in her life.
She's watching.
You better be careful on it.
But outside the home, I should say. Outside the for money, yeah, for money.
All right, no one call Myron's wife.
But she's got 10 conventional loans, so there's creative ways that we could structure this to where someone who's not employed can get conventional financing. And one of the ways you could do this is call it like a 301 level strategy, but if you have one person that is employed, you have them take out the financing, then buy the property, then get the rents. You put it on your tax returns. Once that's seasoned, 1 year or 2 years on your tax returns, then the person who's unemployed refinances it because they don't need an income to refinance one property because that property is bringing in an income unto itself. Mm-hmm. So the only income is the rent, the only expense is the liability. So if you carefully split up your income and expenses in a household, you can start shuffling properties over to the unemployed person with no income because they're using that rent as the sole basis of qualifying. So,
has anyone online or in the room? I know a couple people have bought rental properties, or are there other people out there that have?
So I have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Myron Carson.
hey,
So we have a property that we're renting right now, and I mean, there's like at least $200 grand in equity there. Would it be a good idea to keep that one and then save for a third property, or would it be a good idea to sell that one, use all the equity, and buy some rentals?
You could go either way, but 200,000 in equity is a lot to just leave it in the house while you're just starting out. What would you say, Mike?
is that property with 200,000 of equity a rental?
Yes.
How much? Well, do you want me? is it generating a positive cash flow?
Yes.
How much per month?
Almost like 1,700.
In positive cash flow?
Yeah, because we pay $958 for our mortgage and we rent it out for $2,500.
Jeez.
Okay. So with just for round numbers, you're gonna have some expenses on that, but let's just say your positive cash flow is $1,500 a month.
Mhm.
So that's $18,000 a year. You take $18,000 and divide that by 200,000. Okay, so that's 9%. So that tells you how much your equity is working for you. It's called a return on equity calculation. You take how much income that equity is building you and multiply it by the equity, and that gives you your return. So that will tell you if you hold on and keep that property, it's generating a 9% return for you, which is not a bad return. It's very safe, you've got margin, you've got cash flow. If you feel like you can do better than a 9% return, then what you would want to do is sell that property, capture the equity, and then invest it in a more aggressive strategy that will yield more than 9%.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a bad return though.
That's a great return for something as safe as that.
And you could use that money coming in every year as to buy other properties, right?
Yep.
That could be
Yeah, so-
another way to fund properties.
There you go. Yeah, take the 18,000, save 2 or 3 years, and then apply that. Or you could do an equity line. There is equity lines available for investment properties, so that's one way that you can tap into some of that equity without changing the fundamentals of your existing mortgage or the equity.
Okay, all right, cool,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. I find a lot of investors feel the more equity they have and the more it cash flows, the better they feel about their investment. But the reality is that actually means their investment's performing worse and worse and worse if you do it based on a return on equity calculation.
Yeah, that's true. Any other questions? Yeah?
Wait, explain that again, sorry, I'm just looking up, you said it's performing worse and worse and worse and worse.
Your returns are getting worse and worse, yeah. So you take the monthly profit, so in this case we're saying it's $1,500 a month, times that by 12 months. Okay. So for 1 year, she's making $18,000. Okay. And she's making that $18,000 based on her equity, which is $200,000.
Which the equity is continually increasing by.
Correct. So eventually it's going to be $300,000 and $400,000. And so she's making, if she were to sell that, she could take that $200,000, buy stocks, bonds, other properties. So that's really her asset. And so that $200,000 is making her $18,000, which is a 9% return. And so that's the math as to how you figure out what the return on equity is.
They're not usually that high though.
No.
Once the thing starts appreciating the property.
Yeah, 9% is great. Most investors, when they do the return on equity calculation, is 3, 4, or 5%.
And that is when you want to like sell, right?
Without question, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Is that similar to cap rate?
Pardon me?
Is it similar to like how you calculate the cap rate?
Similar.
Kind of, yeah. Except cap rate, you wouldn't have a mortgage, so it would just be assuming you paid cash for a property. But yeah, it'd be the same, totally, yeah. Spot on.
Yeah. Any additional questions we have?
There's gotta be some. Teresa?
I
Any
think
questions?
now is also a good time if you're online, write in the chat
Yeah.
additional classes you guys want to hear in the future. If this was helpful, we'll start talking through some of the suggestions you guys have because we want to help you invest in real estate because we feel like that's the fastest way to wealth. I know there's some people that do, more people you bring into real estate, you get a little bit of money, but this is the fastest way that you could actually make money in real estate.
Yeah. Maybe one point that I thought of commenting on halfway through was when you focus on multifamily to somebody who wants to live in it, so if you buy it as a primary residence, it's a 2 to 4 unit property. Underwriting does let you use income from those 2 to 4 units to qualify. And so it's actually easier for a borrower to qualify for a 2 to 4 unit property because they have those additional units that they're eligible to take the rent credit for at the time of purchase. So,
So at the time of purchase, do the other units need to be occupied in order
Yes.
to take that credit?
uh-huh,
Okay.
yep. So if they're occupied units, you have to assume you're living in one, so, generally you can't take the rent on the one, but if it was a 4-unit, the other 3 units, you can take 75% of what those leases are, and that then can offset your mortgage payment that you're taking out.
Okay, so
I just wanna know if you could use the VA to buy, like, multiple dwellings. like you
Nice,
do
yes,
with
0% down up to 4 units.
As long as one of them's your primary.
Yeah.
So I have a client who wants to do that exactly, so if he refinances out of the VA on his primary
Yes.
and then buys this one as his primary, he can
Yeah.
then rent out the other one.
There you go.
You
Yeah.
should teach an investing class for VAs.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
I've
up
had
to $720 some odd thousand, right?
more.
That'd be a
That-
lot.
that's
There's no
one
cap
unit.
on
Oh, there's no
VA.
cap.
No cap on your first one. But then on 2, 3, 4 units, they go higher. So you can do an FHA loan of $1 million on a 4-unit in Phoenix. But yes, so I've had clients do that. They buy it 0% down VA. They wait 3 years until they have 20% equity. They refinance back into a conventional mortgage. They go use their VA to buy another 4 units. I had one client once buy 12 units with all with 0% down through utilizing the VA, refinancing it into the conventional.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said something earlier, I don't know if I understood you correctly or if this is, mind blowing for me, but, all right, so we get into situations in our real estate careers where, when you're buying down an interest rate, things like that for a client, you can sometimes go back to the seller and say, hey, let's up the purchase price, just give it back to us as a credit so we can buy down the interest rate, right? It's a common thing. So in that same scenario, us as realtors, if we don't have like the down payment, could we go and do the same thing and say, hey, let's up the purchase price and just give me a higher commission? Any different than use that as your down payment?
Yeah, if you've got a listing agent willing to play, sure.
Why wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, if it's understood that way, and you said, hey, give me a 5% commission, let's stack it on the price.
Your broker probably, right, so just put your fingers near your price, okay?
Yeah, sure. So, I would say within reason. I think if you went over 5 or 6%, they may question that, but yeah.
Well, I think that's all today. We have some upcoming things going on in the brokerage that anyone online or in this room are invited to. The 22nd, we're doing a happy hour at Parlay. It's right up the street from here. It's a new restaurant, Via Ventura and Pima. And the happy hour is going to be 5 to 6:30. And then we're doing another happy hour. It's going to be actually a workshop happy hour combined where we're working through the top 10 objections and making note cards that you guys get to take home here in the brokerage on June 7th. And then we're doing an Airbnb investing class on June 14th. And that's a Wednesday at 10 a.m. So same place, same time. And you guys are more than welcome to come. So
Good. Well, thanks
appreciate
everyone for
everyone
joining.
coming.